When I make pizza with vegan cheese, sometimes it looks amazing, melting and stretching with perfect coverage, and other times it can kind of look a little dry or stringy. So in order to make sure we get the best pie every time, we're gonna put 6 vegan mozzarellas to the test. We'll also try out some tricks to help the cheese melt even better. I think I found a couple cool things. Let's get into it.
First up is the Follow Your Heart shreds. Let's stretch the dough, sauce it up, and add 56 grams of the cheese. Pop it in the oven, rotate it after 4 minutes, and then broil for another 2. Look at all the bubbling in there. Dang, that's a beaut. Let's listen in. The fat rendered out nicely, and I don't see very many shreds that didn't melt into each other, which is good. Let's cut this up and see if we can get a cheese pull. Nope, the back is looking nice. Now let's give it the old taste-a-roo. Great flavor, I would totally eat this again, but texturally, it is a little sticky. We'll put this one in C tier. Now let's test out the other shred. I thought this would be cool to do a side-by-side, and same deal here, added cheese to the sauced pizza dough. I did notice that the shreds were a little thinner, longer, and a little bit more oily than the Follow Your Heart shreds. After the bake, it was noticeable that the Daiya didn't render the fat and melt as well as the Follow Your Heart. Let's cut this up and see if we can get a cheese pull. Nice! I think that was one of the best cheese pulls on a vegan pizza I've ever seen. As far as the texture goes, the Daiya shreds is better than the Follow Your Heart, but it lacked the subtle white cheese flavors. Between the two products, I think it's a tie. So we'll put the Daiya shreds in C-list too. But wait, since I liked the flavor but not the texture of the Follow Your Heart, I've got an idea. Let's try and pulse this in a food processor to see how that affects the texture. You see, in the shreds, they add starches just like in dairy-based pre-shredded cheeses so that the shreds won't stick back together while it's on the shelf. I want to see if breaking the Follow Your Heart shreds down to tiny bits will help with the melt while giving it a better bite. So let's slap this in the oven and give it a go. Okay, this looks way different, and so far, this is one of the best looking pizzas we've made. Cheese pull test didn't get any better, and surprisingly, the texture is 10 to 15% better. So I definitely recommend running these in a food processor for about 10 to 15 seconds if you have the time. This little hack bumped the Follow Your Heart shreds up a notch to B territory. Next up, we have the Daiya Jalapeno Havarti block, which is as close as I could find to a block of mozz. I'll shred this up using the biggest holes on my cheese grater. My hypothesis is that this cheese will be better all around since fewer extra starches had to be added during the manufacturing process. The shreds actually feel different. They're a little softer and not as dusty or oily, which is really nice actually. Straight out of the oven, it did look a little dry, and you could still see the individual strands of cheese, which I don't like so much visually, so not as good on the eyeball test there. Cheese pull test? Non-existent. The flavor though was fantastic. The jalapeno gave it a good little kick, but there were still some great subtle notes that you get from mild cheese in there too. I'm gonna put this cheese block into A tier. So to see if I can fix the appearance issues, which seem to be because of the lack of fat in the cheese, I'm gonna try one more pizza with this Daiya Havarti block, shredding it again, but this time adding about 1.5 teaspoons or so of oil to see if that helps with the melting. So let's slide this into the oven and see if it makes a difference. Wow, straight out of the oven, this looks way better. The extra oil definitely helped it melt. And yep, it still tastes just as good, if not a little bit better. I'd recommend using this little oil trick, and I'd be interested to see how it performs on other shredded blocks of cheese. So if you do that, let me know. Adding oil puts this right into S tier. Now on to the next cheese. As I mentioned, I couldn't find a mozzarella block near me, so I thought I'd try these mozzarella slices to see if they would shred up and work well on pizza. I'm pressing these down so they will hopefully stick together better and shred, and looks like it didn't work. Grating this was a little bit messy, and you could still use the rest of these slices on a sandwich for sure. So I put this in the oven, then went back to rotate it, and my boy is straight up crushing it in the oven. I think we're gonna have a pretty good looking za, bro. No cheese pull though. Let's check the old Tasterino. It's pretty great. I wonder if we found a winner. It is oily, but not too much, with a great mild cheese flavor. I'm going to add this to A tier. Next up, we got the Miyoko's block of cashew cheese. I knew before opening that this was going to be a little too soft to shred, so I let it sit in the freezer for about an hour. Even then, it didn't shred super well, and the shreds kind of clumped back together. Next time, I would just cut it and shape it into little balls meatballs on the pizza Napolitan style. I'm sure someone will correct me on that in the comments. And yep, just as I figured, out of the oven, it ended up looking a bit odd as the fat didn't render out melting the cheese. This is probably just user error though. I'm not even gonna try the cheese pull on this one, let's just dig in. Really nice fermented, fruity notes, which I like a lot. It could, however, use some seasoning, either with salt or MSG. The taste puts this square into A tier for me. On to the next. Now this liquid mozzarella was everywhere when it came out, but now I'm kind of having a hard time finding it where I live. I poured a 4th cup on my pizza per the instructions on the bottle, but it seemed like a little too much. And yep, when I tried to shake it off my peel, some of the cheese flew off, so watch out for that. Out of the oven, there was an obvious spot where the cheese fell off. Again, my fault. The pizza also could have used more time in the oven, I think, but to be fair, I had to cook it for the same time I cooked the rest of the pizzas. Dems the rules, baby. I tried a torch on all the pizzas, but this one was the only one I'm showing as it charred correctly. The rest of them just kind of burned. Like the last block, this also had a nice tangy fermented flavor, but it needed more seasonings like salt. Must be a very similar recipe. I'm gonna put this in B tier, but I wouldn't be surprised that if you cook this for longer, it'd land in A tier.
Okay, so what is the best cheese for pizza? My favorite overall, and what I'll be doing every single pizza night, is using a block of cheese and shredding that, adding a little bit of oil to help the cheese melt itself. So if you experiment with me and find a feta way to do this, let me know in the comments. And if you think this video is Gouda, check out my pepperoni video here. And if you believed you learned something or you liked it, please feel free to like and subscribe. Until next time, y'all, be nice to each other and keep cheesing cooking.